Welcome back to Learning to Read the Bible Effectively. And if you were here, and I know some of you were for the previous 3 sessions we had, you will know that we went through a number of stages of the presentations, and we were looking to really find a path to not just reading the Bible, but making more of what we read. And so that was the purpose we're doing. And this is, just as a reminder for you, these sessions, these 6 sessions, cover the 12 parts of our Learn to Read the Bible Effectively correspondence course, which is available from our website, openbiblelearninggroup.com. And this is really an introduction just to get you going, to get your juices going, so you can get enthused about getting into those sections of the study material. So the next 30 minutes or so, we're just going to briefly go over that, give you some tools and techniques and things. And so what we're going to do is really answer these questions, hopefully, of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and why we're going to learn to read the Bible effectively. And hopefully this will encourage you to look into these things a little bit more deeply. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you some of the tools you might need to help to learn to read the Bible for yourself, because it's important that you just don't get people feed you stuff, that you actually go and read the Bible for yourself. That's really important. And so making it effective, we need to have a toolkit of things that we can use to understand, to get under the skin of what the words say. And so with our toolkit, what we hope to be able to do is, through these interactive sessions, give you an opportunity to ask questions now, but also when you do the Learn to Read the Bible Effectively correspondence course, you will be working with an online tutor that will take you through those things. If you've got questions, work through the exercises, come back to your assigned tutor to get some feedback from that. And of course there's the Thursday evening sessions which we provide. We've mentioned this before, the Thursday evening sessions where you can have a Q&A. Just bring your questions to the Zoom group at 7:30 on a Thursday. Okay, so we will then go through this. We hope that by doing this you'll understand and discover the true meaning that's lying beneath the words, and realise that this is the world's most special book, because it has a very important life-affirming message for you, which will take you beyond the things that you see around you. And so it's a really important book, and important for you to get under the skin of it. So what have we done so far? Well, we've had a number of sessions. I mentioned that we are going through these 6 short sessions, and there you are. There's the 6 sessions and what's contained in it. We've done the first 3. We're here this afternoon to look at tips on reading the Bible and give an overview of the second group of books. You might remember we looked before at we looked at how the books in the Bible are arranged as a library, and we saw that they were in groups. And what we're going to be able to do is just touch on some of those in the second half of this session today. So having done that, we're just going to I'd like you to start sharing your ideas with the group. What do you find as useful things for ideas to when you approach reading the Bible? What's the things that you do? How do you approach it? Hopefully you read it every day, do you? Read a little bit?
I read a small piece at a time.
Small piece at a time. That's a really good idea because it can be quite heavy going otherwise, can't it? If it's all new stuff. What else? Anybody else? Sorry?
You must have a Bible.
You must have a Bible. That's a good starting point. I mean, that's one of the obvious. We don't think. Yeah, of course you must. And a pencil. Yeah, something so you can make notes. Yeah. So.
I would look out for where it's perhaps relevant to my life or what message might be contained that's relevant to today. So it's not just the narrative.
That's a very good point. Yeah. It's not just the narrative, it's not the history, it's about relevant today, and so it's personal. That's what you're saying, isn't it? It's about the things that are personal to you. Anything else?
The urge. You must have the urge.
You must have the
Urge.
the urge. You know, the urge. You must really want to. Yeah. Otherwise, it's something you're being forced to do. Can you remember back at school when you were given stuff you had to read? I can remember English literature. Being given these books you had to read, and you weren't enthusiastic about the subject. It was people you didn't relate to, but you'll read the book that you are really interested in, won't you? And you can't put it down. And that's the key. Right, so that's some great ideas to get us going. So let's have a look here at some of the things of what we did. So what did we cover in the previous weeks? Who can remember? I know we've had a gap, right?
Things like how we can use reference books.
How we can use reference books.
Yeah.
Yep.
Things like that to help us with our study.
Yeah. And what?
Different versions of the Bible.
Different versions of the Bible. Yeah, because why do we got different versions of the Bible?
One's a more modern translation, so the
Yeah.
words are a little bit more
Translations. It's because we want to read it in English, don't we? And the Bible was written in what? Who can remember? Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Yes. And I'm not a fluent speaker in any of those. And some people would argue I'm not a fluent speaker in English. But you be the judge of that by the time we get to the end of this afternoon, eh? Yeah. So we have there's a few things that we could do. One of the things, and this is a tip, and I think that Ruth there mentioned it, well, was hinting at it, reading a bit at a time, but a lot of people dip in a little bit here and then. How the fancy takes them. Yeah. Do you think that's a good idea? No. No. Oh, Ron, really on the ball there. No. Why?
Well, I think you tend to choose bits that you probably are easy to read.
Yeah.
And you're perhaps more interested in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always feel you should start at the beginning.
Start at the beginning.
Like most books.
Right. Who reads a book, picks up a book and looks at the last page to see what happens? Yeah, it wouldn't work with the Bible, would it? Because no, of course not. Somebody mentioned that the other day about reading the book. I looked at the book. I think it was Mike. We were talking online, saying that he had a friend that. Was it you? Oh right, okay, yeah. I knew it was online. You look a lot like Mike in a way when you're online. Yeah. So yeah, it is to sort of look at the last page to see if you like find out what happens. Yeah, and it doesn't work like that, does it? Because it's all important. So you need a structure you need a plan to get through that, to understand it. So how do we go about finding that plan? Well, look, here's a thing. Reading the Bible should be a bit like eating. Regular and balanced intake leads to the best spiritual diet and health. Now, I know we've got a lot of people in the room that have got an interest in diets and for various reasons, but just think for the moment, you've been to get your shopping for the month. Yeah? And you've got all the bags there for the month. And you think, start at the beginning. I'll eat all the breakfast first, then I'll eat all the lunch stuff for later in the month, and then I'll eat all the tea. Yeah, now, I mean, I know that if you've got teenagers in the house, they go straight for the chocolates and things like that, and it's a bit pick and mix, isn't it? But what you need is a balanced meal. You might have all the shopping there, you might have the whole Bible in front of you, but you need to read it in a structured way so you've got a balanced meal each day. A little bit of each thing. So we've got on the top of the slide there, hidden behind that little picture of me, there's a little meal planner. I had one of those when I remember it being on the wall when I was at primary school. They had a thing about eating your fish and your cereal and to balance on a plate. That's like that. And here's a reference from Psalm 119 verse 7. Oh, how I love your law, it is my meditation all the day. It's a mixture taking of all of it, and just it's a daily thing. Yeah. So benefits that come from reading the Bible in a systematic way is, of course, well, it's a big book, as Ruth hinted at. It is a big book, and we need to approach it in a way. And we could do with some help to help us acquaint ourselves with the different parts of it, so that we're not confused by it. It's like getting all the shopping and having all the labels off the package, and you don't have to open the packet out first to find out what's inside. No, it's nice to have a label on the packet to do that, to find what you want when you need it. So some tools are helpful, and realise there's an Old and New Testament. They cover different periods of time and in a different way, and it's good to have a balanced mixture of them. And so you can progressively build your understanding throughout the year and the following year, because you're not going to get it all at once. Just as when you buy your groceries, you eat the food, you don't grow up all in one go. It takes time for you to develop and to build up. And if you go to the gym, you don't start on the big weights straight away. You start on the little weights and you work your way up. It's important to do that. And it's good if you can follow along with other students, Bible students. And I'll use the pointer here, but online you won't see my little pointer. But we've got on the right hand side there's a little leaflet thing showing you there, and that is a table of the different days of the year and a reading you might suggest to go through. Now, what you might be also worth looking at here is, if you would like to do this, and a lot of people do read it on their phone or on their computer, there's a really good link there to the Bible.com, which has got lots of Bible versions. Ruth mentioned the versions, Bible.com. And if you use that link, I can always give that link to you afterwards, but use that link, you can go to a Bible planning reading, for reading, which you can have on your phone, and it follows a plan, the same plan as on that leaflet there. And it was devised by Robert Roberts a long while ago, but it gives you that 3 meals a day type approach to reading the Bible. So you can have a little bit before breakfast, bit of your lunch, and you can have a little bit to read in the evening without getting it all at once. So you take it a bit at a time. Okay, now just to show you what that might look like, when you go to that link there, that is, you'll get this page here, and this is the image you're looking for with this cornfield, and you can start the plan, and as the previous slide said, today, the 5th of June, is day 156 on that plan. So if you wanted to synchronise with everybody else that's reading it in this room, you could do that. Start from that day 156, and you would get to the end of the year, and you'd finish with the end of the Old Testament and the end of Revelations and at the same time. And then January the 1st, you start again in Genesis and in beginning of Psalms and the beginning of the New Testament. It's a good way to read together. And what's the benefit of all reading it together on the same day, the same chapters? You can discuss it together, yeah. And there are people in this room who've got WhatsApp groups that do that, and can discuss it together and ask questions that come up. What does this mean in this particular thing? It's a great way to learn together with others. So yeah, that's a great one to do it. You start the plan, but you then can start at that point, and you can actually ask questions via that plan as well. There is a great number of people. I don't think you can see over here. I don't know if you see on the van, it says over, get it right, 50,000 completions. So 50,000 people have completed that online. I've been using that plan system for years. It's really, really helpful. Okay, so there it is again. You can go to www.bible.com bible.com/en for English -GB. Guess why that is? So you get the English version, UK version, rather than the American version of it, and it's all on there for you. You can get the app on your phone, which is, go to your app store, and it's called YouBible. That's the app for that. Okay, good tools. So what are the conditions you best need to do your Bible reading? What do we need around us, and what's the best way to do it? Peace and quiet. Yeah? Anything else? Sorry? Ideally.
There are people that will say read it while they're on the train or something, their time, but ideally a quiet time when you're not going to be distracted and disturbed.
Yeah.
You can actually see it through.
So you can see it through. Yeah, that's important, I think, really, is to avoid the distractions so you can concentrate on what you're reading. And you're fresh. Good in the morning, isn't it? Before breakfast or something like that, to get going. It opens, gives you something to think about throughout the day. Yeah. So what we think, we're just been asking this, so you find a time of day that works for you. Okay? You find a comfy chair. No, it doesn't have to be too comfortable, by the way. Or you couldn't you? If it's late in the evening, if that's 8 in the evening and you're on the sofa, it could be a completely different experience to 8 in the morning sitting at the breakfast table, couldn't it? Yeah? Very, very different thing to do. You might want to sit at a desk, a table, so you can have your notebook that Maurice mentioned, having the pencil and the paper next to it to ask, what are the questions? What do I not understand is the best thing to ask. What do I not understand of what I've just read? And then put that as a question down. Okay? And maybe then we turn to our reference books or different versions. We can see there we've got an NIV and we've got an ESV on that list there. We've got, it looks like we've got an AV sitting there. We've got the green one is, if I remember rightly, I've got a copy of that at home, that one. That's the application-based NLT, yes. Yeah, it's that one. Yeah, so I've got a collection of different ones, and they're useful to have it. I don't understand that. What's another version put it? What's another way of putting it? Yeah. So you can get to the bottom of what it means. And there's, you know, you might want to use your on your phone a lookup reference system there, a concordance to go with it and help you understand it. So the useful ways of working to get around to doing your study. And so this is a really important to come approach it. I talked about questions. What do you not understand? So having the right attitude when you read it. Don't just gabble through it. A right attitude, a questioning mind. An open mind is far better than a closed mind. To let those ideas come to the surface, think about what it's saying. Don't bring your ideas to the Bible. See what the Bible says to you about you and your life. And so I've kind of answered that question, what the benefits are of having an open mind. Anyone else like to add to what I've said? More like to find the truth. Yeah. Yeah. Far better, more likely to find the truth than confirming your own preconceived ideas. Because it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is always to listen. Listen to what, you know, with your eyes as well. But listen to what the Bible is saying to you.
Somebody said, I've got a lot of unlearning to do when it came to the Bible.
Yes.
That I've been taught all of this, and now I just need to actually
yes.
go to the open mind frame.
Yeah. It depends if what your traditions that you bring to the Bible. If you're really interested in learning what the Bible says, you don't necessarily want to listen to what other people have said the Bible says. Okay. So, let's think about some of those things that we might be looking for in it when we're reading. And We talked about distractions. Louise mentioned about distractions. But one technique that some people advocate is to read it out aloud, to hear the words, because the truth of the Bible was preached originally. It was preached. It was out of people's mouths. So the message often lands better if you actually hear it. So reading it out loud can help. And reading in a group, even if it's pick the phone up and talk to a friend and read it together, can be really helpful. Spotting echoes. This doesn't mean in a room with hard walls so you can hear the echoes in the room, that sort of echoes. It's looking for themes that get repeated. And as it says there, we talked about this on the first session we had. It was the evening session we had in here, wasn't it? A couple of months ago. And testing that understanding that you get by asking questions of yourself, and if you're working on this with somebody else, you ask questions about what does that mean, and see if you can understand it that way. So some of the questions you might want to, the way you might want to frame those questions, beginning with what is the main subject of what I'm reading about in this chapter? That's a good one to start with. Who are the central characters? What do we learn about God or Jesus in this? Where are things taking place? Get a map out, have a look. Our memories work in a funny way. Our memories work very much better when we think about facts and things in conjunction with a place. So memory is a funny thing like that. If you always do it in exactly the same environment with nothing else changing around you, it's very difficult to remember all the things you need to. But often, you know, have you ever been in a car listening to the radio with a story and not really taking any particular attention to the connections, but then on another time you might turn the radio on and hear the same story, and you remember that junction you were at, because your mind is very good at locking location to things, facts. So that's a really good, so having a map and learning where these things happened is really, really helpful. Ask yourself, what's the central question around this? One of the questions I read is, why has it been left on record that this thing we should know about? Are there other examples to follow, avoid being talked about here? Or what specifically applies to my life today? Are there any helpful cross-references? Remember we talked about the cross-references in the Bible down the middle of the page between the two columns? Check those out. See, are there any references to those? Turn them up. Physically do it. It really helps. And are there any linkages to the other readings? One of the things I think you'll find if you do the 3 portions throughout the day is you'll read something in the New Testament and you think, oh, that's a little bit of a link to something in the earlier in the day. And next year when you read those same readings in the same order, you'll spot something else. And are there words or things that need explaining? That's it. What are the questions I've got? What do I not understand? So very well, you can write down what I understand and write down what I don't understand. It's a very helpful way to approach these things.
I know there's a card deck you can get with those sorts of questions on it.
Yeah?
It's quite handy if you're a family, you can sort of hand them out.
Hand them out before doing the reading together.
Yeah, you can do it before or after you read.
Yeah, and of course as families it's good to do readings to families, even if just do one chapter in the day all as a group. It's a helpful technique to use because as we mentioned in an earlier one of these sessions, that there are bits at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis which we see develop and grow throughout the course of the Bible. And there's these threads that run through from beginning to end. And we can see them develop. Particularly, I would say, like, take the promises to Abraham. We see them reinforced and added to and enriched as we go through the generations. And so not to forget that we are looking at, with this, a library of books, because so we've got these themes that are occurring throughout the thing. Things in the law get picked up in the prophets and the applications of it. And we see that again, what's happening then in the New Testament when Paul's writing his letters to the churches, and for example, in reading in Hebrews, we'll see there that it's because he's talking to people with a background in the law and the history, that there are references to that and allusions to those things, if not even quotes from these earlier books in there. And so what we're going to do, just to give a bit of an overview, we said we looked at the first instance, we looked at the beginning of Genesis in an earlier session, and now we're going to be looking at this period of Exodus through to Judges is the next chunk. And it's a period some 450 to 500 years, or really I suppose I should say 500 years to 450 years BC, before there's that period there, it's 450 to 500 years, a period from the Exodus through into Joshua, Judges, and into Ruth. That period, we're going to look at that period. And it's an important period because a number of those books there are written by Moses. And, it's sort of like, we can see here, it's sort of like 1600 years BC, more or less, 15 to 1600 years BC. And a lot of people said this is impossible. Why do you think they said it was impossible that Moses could have written these books? Sorry? He wasn't alive the whole time. No, I'm not talking about, I mean, these books are the Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the books of the Pentateuch and Genesis. Why do people say that they might not have been written by Moses? Why would they challenge it? Their writing was available. Yes, how could he have written it? They didn't have writing then. It's a long while ago. That's what people said. There's a slight problem with that, you see, because there is evidence of why this, this is wrong to say that. And the evidence is here. Here's the Codex Hammurabi, 1750 BC. Now, it's not very distinct on there, perhaps on your screens, but I think that's be a cuneiform style. Yeah, a cuneiform chiselled into that stone. It is clearly writing. And therefore, there's evidence then that if the time of that Genesis through to Deuteronomy was written by Moses, writing was available, and not just this cuneiform style of writing. So the ancient Hebrew text was it was possible for that to be written. So that demolishes that, and the consistency and the of what's written is really an indicator that it was clearly from God. And of course, Jesus refers to it, and that's good enough for me. If Jesus referred to it and spoke of Moses writing, he talks about teaching of Moses and the prophets. Jesus began with Moses and the prophets and taught. So therefore, it's evidence that it was written in those things. Now, the patterns and echoes that we see in there are these themes we're talking about that we see coming through the books, and there's a number of them. Would anyone like to suggest some of the patterns and themes we might see coming through from the period of Moses and the law, and that we might see the Bible? Anyone? suggesting what we might be looking for. If we were saying we're reading the Bible, we're looking to see what patterns might come from the early books into the later books.
Some of their, like in the Pentateuch, it's got many of the, when they came out of Egypt,
Yeah.
that feast was kept in Jesus' time.
The feast, yes. The feasts were carried through at that time. What else was carried through and patterns do we see? Do we see analogies? What do the feasts represent?
We see how man started falling idolatry
Right.
and worshipping other gods.
Yeah.
We also see how this attitude evolved, being start to reject things of God.
Right. So we see those patterns of idolatry, idolatry and of rejecting God, and we see that pattern repeated through, don't we? Yeah. And warnings, yeah. And we see also in the law and the prophets and the feasts and the festivals represented something which came later. They pointed towards Jesus. They pointed forward. And we call them either echoes or types because they illustrate, they're typical of, a type is typical of something else. And so we see these echoes coming through, and here's some examples of what we see. We see, for example, Exodus is when they left the Egyptian slavery and passed through the waters of the Red Sea, passing through the waters of the Red Sea, and they came out of Egypt. We then see that Leviticus talks about the instructions, how they should worship God and how they should live. This was followed by Numbers, which was showing the test of obedience they had and how few remained faithful to that law. Then the Deuteronomy shows how the people are reminded of the law. This is towards the end of, before Moses' death, he wrote to complete this. They're reminded of the law, and their leader Moses dies at the end of that book. So there we've got a pattern. How does it follow through? And we've got Joshua leads them into the promised land afterwards. Amazing story, but it's got parallels with ourselves because we are called to leave slavery to sin, passing through the waters of baptism as they pass through the Red Sea. We are instructed on how we should worship God, leading to a new life. That's the process, the Levitical, the instructions of how to worship. We see a parallel then with Numbers, showing that we are tested with our life's difficulties, and only a few of us will be saved. Only the few of the world will be saved. It's a selective process. And in Deuteronomy, we saw the people reminded of the law, and we are reminded by of God by our hope and choice which we made, which came through Jesus' death. And finally then we hope to have this prospect of entering into the kingdom of God under Jesus. So you see the pattern that was there in those books that Moses wrote. We see them there as our passage towards salvation. It's a repeated pattern that we see there. One is an echo of the other. So let's pull some things together, summarising those two areas that we looked at today with tools and also some summary of the themes in the books there. And just to ask and to think about what are the things we're going to take away from the session. So I'll help you here with the time. First of all, what did these represent? These two symbols that we see here, what did they represent when we talked about those? Questions? A balanced diet and a plan. And a reading plan, yeah, we had a reading plan and we had a balance of diet of it. What about the clock and the bookshelf and the comfy chair? What does that remind us of?
Picking a good time.
Picking a good time. Yeah. Yeah, picking a good time, having some resources available to us, and being comfortable, comfortable but not too comfortable. Yeah. And what about that picture? Having an open mind. Yeah, the blue pill and the red pill, for those who understand that cultural reference. And yeah, so we need to have the open mind. And there was all these, they were coloured in before. What were they? Questions, yeah. Have the questions. What are the questions? What are we looking for when we come to read our Bibles? So that's a pretty much a summary of it. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? And the things, what else are you taking away? Sorry?
Yes, Barry, I need to add something.
Right. Maurice.
When you read the Bible, it talks about reading the Bible. It doesn't talk about reading it on your phone. For me, the phone is used to communicate.
Yeah.
Even banking apps, I do not like.
Right.
I think, for me, I will read my Bible
as a Bible.
As a Bible.
Yeah.
Then I'm reading the Bible. I'm not reading something
from the screen.
From the screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, for me, maybe
yeah.
I'm wrong.
No, definitely not.
I feel if we start encouraging people to just tap on this technology,
yeah,
the Bible will become a book of dust in the house.
I understand what you say. Yeah.
Although we are modernized now, but sometimes we should be a bit careful.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place for there is a place for both. I personally, I think there's a place for both. And to be able to look things up, but you've got the Bible where you physically touch it. I think turning a page, look into something, that feel of it, and being able to write there on the page with you as you make your note is a really powerful thing to help you getting it from the page into your head and then into your heart. Yeah?
In my opinion, I may be wrong. I'll still read the Bible.
Right, good. So that's it's important that you do read the Bible, but you know.
On an app, no.
Right. Okay. Right. Was there anything else? Anyone else who want to take away from this? No. Okay. Right. Let's just finally then. Oh, there's one stone there. Was the stone was a right. That was because. Cuneiform writing, because it proves what? Moses had, writing was available to Moses. Yeah, excellent, good. Okay, and those echoes we talked about as well through there of the message. So we have now just been going through section 4. I'll remind you again that that this is an introduction, a taster to the actual correspondence course, which goes in depth, and you have to work through pages and write up the notes and things like that. So we've now completed that today, and next time Patrick will be taking us, God willing, through some more study tools and looking at some terminology in this session, and that's the same time Sunday afternoon at 2:30 here. And of course, if you want to invite someone else to come along, there's never too late to join this course thing, because you can always go back over it again. These are introductions to it, and so that's for next week. And so I'd like to thank you all, both online and also in the room, for your attention to this session, and I do hope that you pick your Bibles up more often and read it and study it. Thank you.